So let's start with the first case which I would like to relate. This case, as I've related in the first part of this video, is about the very strange circumstances at the end of which I lost my left kidney in an hospital belonging to the Ministry of Home Affairs. All this started in March of 2003 when I went into an hospital belonging to the Hungarian Ministry of Home Affairs, where on my first day I related my complaints to the doctors. Actually, I was sweating and had slight headaches and slight pains on the pelvis area. Here I note that the mentioned symptoms weren't so intensive at that date, so I was able to walk to settle my things. On the second day of my hospitalization, after a blood test, the doctors treating me came to know that my blood sedimentation rate was 120, which compared with a normal rate of between 8 and 20 was a dangerous one, obviously proving that there is a dangerous inflammatory process in my body. On the third day of my hospitalization, after a ventral ultrasound exam, there turned out that both my kidneys were healthy and they aren't the cause of my complaints. Beside the ventral ultrasound exam, I underwent to an ECG, an X-ray, an otolaryngological and urological examinations, but the doctors treating me said that the causes of my complaints were still not diagnosed. They said this in spite of the fact that I had a constant level of 38, 39.5 Celsius degree, and I hadn't appetite at all, and my pains started to be more intensive as the time passed. On the fourth day of my hospitalization, beside these pains, this pains became very intensive, and after having a painful cramp onto my left waist area, I could to stay and walk just bended onto my left side. In spite of this, of the above symptoms, nobody from the doctors ordered that my temperature to be measured, but a nurse discovered that by putting her hand on my front, and just on the fourth day of my hospitalization. I received the first antibiotic called Ciprobi just at 1st of April, namely on my 6th day of hospitalization, when my state of health was already very deplorable. But this antibiotic didn't help me. My condition became worse in spite of it. I have to mention that an acquaintance of mine who practiced as internist doctors for many years, after having consulted the medical documentation issued regarding my treatment, declared that the Ciprobi antibiotic it wasn't enoughly strong. That is, if at the time when he practiced as internist doctor, he would apply Ciprobi to a sick patient having my blood results, he would be seriously admonished by the medical chief. What's more, I became to know after leaving the hospital that on the 4th day of April, the medic chief treating me, in spite of the fact that he knew that I had septicemia also, and was in that danger, didn't administer to me any other strong antibiotics, in spite of the fact that he saw that I suffered from very severe pains and my state of health became worse. On 8th of April, I underwent a second ventral ultrasound exam and was discovered that there had been developed an abscess into left side area of my pelvis. So this abscess had been developed under the hospital treatment under the term of 11 days. So if we are taking into consideration that the results of the first ventral ultrasound exam, just after 11 days was discovered this abscess. After having this abscess discovered, the doctors administered to me a very strong intravenous antibiotic called Cleon, and I was transferred into another home office hospital where around 9th and 10th of April of 2003, after the administering of this very strong antibiotic, my state of health started to improve suddenly. In this new hospital, I was taken on 10th of April to be operated, but I was kept in the knowledge that only my abscess is to be removed. There, on the operation table, just with seconds before to be narcotized, I was asked to undersign a printed paper. When I asked what is that paper, a voice of a man told me that this is the agreement into the operation. I undersigned this paper, but I hadn't the opportunity to read the contents of it, since after my signature I felt asleep suddenly because of the narcotics administered into my spine. When I awaked, I was told that my kidney has to be removed. What can I say? I was shocked because before the operation nobody warned me that this might happen. The doctors were said that the reason because they didn't warn me before the operation, it was since the necessity of removing my kidney was discovered just before after they opened my pelvis area. But from the CT images made before the operation, it turns out clearly that they had to know before the operation and not after they opened my pelvis area that there is a real chance for my kidney to be removed. And so, according to the relevant legal rules, they were obliged to warn me even of the possibility of the removing of my kidney. But this didn't happen at all. And this is the reason why I suffered a real shock after the operation. Of course, these statements are available just if on the CT images obtained after very hard struggles, it's represented really in my body. I think that this should be checked, but not here in Hungary, where everybody tries to serve their doctor's interests by all means. These are the circumstances under which I have lost my left kidney and left the hospital having weighed just 70 kilograms. That is, I lost under a period of 2 weeks around 20 kilograms. After this, in the autumn of 2003, I managed to obtain the entire documentation issued regarding the hospital treatment. Then I realized that the before mentioned agreement into operation missed from it. When I asked about it the legal representative of the hospital, I was told that they handed me over all the documentation and to not call her again with this problem. Being refused by the hospital, I've turned to the police authorities in order to have cleared the vanishing of this agreement into operation, which, if would be available, would serve the interest of the doctors operating me, treating me. One of the doctors declared to the police authorities that this agreement into operation, it was undersigned by me with a day before the operation into the presence of witnesses. And most probably it was me who should lose it, since they had been handed over to me many times the entire documentation, the entire medical documentation, and on one of these occasions I should lose it. This is a lie. I've never got the medical documentation when meanwhile I was in the hospital under the treatment, and beside this, the concerned rules aren't allowed to the doctors, to them, to hand over this documentation to nobody without having secured at least one version of it for themselves. Then, after become aware of the statement of this doctor, I realized that they are hiding something from me, and they are willing even to lie in order to keep this secret concealed. This agreement into operation is missing to date. What's more, after I've submitted my complaint regarding this issue to the Hungarian ombudsman, very later in the autumn of 2010, I've got the response of the ombudsman. According to it, the ombudsman looked through the entire original documentation of the hospital treatment, and between these documents he discovered this agreement into operation, but it wasn't undersigned by nobody. For this reason, I'm asking myself day by day, what has to be comprised into that paper undersigned by me with seconds before I fell asleep onto the operation table, that this has to vanish. So after this, I've resolved my mind to start a process against the doctors on the grounds of malpractice. But this wasn't such simple than I had expected. I've contacted 9 lawyers who refused my case on different grounds, but I know that the real reason was that they were afraid to fight against high society doctors. When I've almost lost my hope, the 10th lawyer accepted to represent me, and in the autumn of 2007 I managed to start the malpractice case. The case started with 2 postponements of half a year each, on the grounds that the hospital in which I was treated were closed by, and their legal successor, designed by my lawyer, namely the State Health Center Hospital, its Hungarian name is Állami Egészségügyi Központ. So this hospital denied his legal successor position. After these 2 postponements, in the autumn of 2008, the Állami Egészségügyi Központ, so State Health Center Hospital, has to accept our resignation, and the case could to start. The hearings were kept with intervals of half a year, and till the year of 2010, when suddenly the State Health Center Hospital, denied again its legal successor position, and the case followed again with 3 postponements of half a year each. What's more, there weren't to find anywhere a document to design who is the real legal successor of this home office hospital where I was treated. Meanwhile, my lawyer was called upon by the judge to designate the proper legal successor. Since there weren't any documents designating this legal successor, I found myself into the threatened position of the dismissal of my case. At this point, I became fed up, and in a letter I turned towards the Ministry of Health by asking them to designate for me the proper legal successor in this case. Guess who was designed as legal successor? Of course, again, the State Health Center Hospital. So, the Állami Egészségügyi Központ in Hungarian. Meanwhile, I submitted my complaint letter to the European Court of Human Rights on my opinion, since on my opinion the State Health Center Hospital had been used intentional temporization tactics which are offending my right to on trial disputed and closed onto a reasonable period of time. But the above-mentioned facts aren't the only anomalies occurred in this malpractice case. Besides the above-related occurrences, I also consider it very important to utter a couple of words about the roles of the Hungarian judicial medical experts concerning my case. There were issued 2 medical experts' opinions concerning this case. Both of them are stating that the doctors treating me had been acted properly and they aren't to be kept liable for the losing of my kidney. So, in other words, both medical experts are trying to explain the unexplainable thing that according to 2003 years standing of the Hungarian medical science, on their proper care and treatment, on their almost daily blood tests, and on the knowledge of the 120 rate of blood sedimentation, after many warnings of mine, of the patient, there couldn't be stopped the developing of an abscess and the setting of the septicemia, and thus the contamination of my kidney, the contamination and finally the losing of my kidney. I consider these opinions that these opinions are breaking the principle of impartiality, since it's clear that under proper care, if there would be administered in proper time and a stronger antibiotic, the development of this abscess would be stopped and so my kidney saved. But there is another question to be explained. What if all this happened for other reasons? What if these doctors are trying to hide other things than a simple malpractice? Many people are asking me, after I'm telling them about this case, questions like, "Hey, Sándor, don't you think that the doctors have done all this in order to steal your kidney for illegal organ traffic purposes?" Or another question, "Hey Sándor, don't you think that they did this with you in order to have the chance to make forbidden experiments on you?" What can I say? Always ruminating on the unanswerable question if I was a victim of a crime or of a malpractice crime is very exhaustive. It sounds ridiculously, but if I would be sure that all this was just a malpractice, I would be able to digest all this story. In the year of 2004, I went to a psychiatrist in the hope that he could help me with this psychical problem. But I had to realize that nothing would change till I won't be in the situation to know the truth, or at least to become convinced that there wasn't happened nothing malicious from the part of the doctors who treated me. That's why I motioned on polygraph tests, but didn't succeed to achieve it to date. As you can see, here in Hungary, the hospital's patients are very vulnerable and it's very easy to be abused. My conviction is that there it must be issued at the level of the European Union a legal rule which shouldn't allow the destruction of any organ, tissue, cell removed from a human body on the basis that this is to be considered as dangerous rubbish. Thus, if necessary, later, it could be examined the necessity of its removal, also being possible to prove its appertaining to the person from whose body allegedly it was removed. This would be desirous, since in this way would be possible to avoid such cases as is mine, and nobody would become psychically ruined as myself. So this was the first case I would like to relate about. After this, in the next video I will relate about the second case. So let's meet there in the third video and second case.